Now, perhaps we are live.
Hi,
Hugh,
everybody.
it's good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time.
I don't know if we've actually spoken since before Christmas.
It's been,
Uh,
I
uh,
think that was it. No, I don't know that we've spoken this year. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
You look older. I'm kidding.
I am. I am. What's the Simon and Garfunkel quote? Older than I once was, younger than I'll be. That's not
Hmm.
unusual.
Hmm. I'm appreciating that as I get older, things are not as serious and they are more serious than they have ever been.
Oh wow. Oh,
The
all right.
balloon is getting bigger.
I'm pretty sure I've quoted to you before the Stephen Dunn poem that says, "I love the logic of oxymorons and how paradox
Mm.
helps us not to feel insane." So let's unpack that paradox.
So I think what's happening is if you imagine a balloon in two dimensions. So if you imagine if you were looking at a balloon but you only had the ability to appreciate it in two dimensions, you would imagine you'd have this almost if you were standing along the x-axis, you would look in both directions and you would see a barrier in both directions. You would see a barrier to your left as the numbers proceeded uh,
I'm inside the balloon,
positively.
am I?
You're in the balloon,
Okay, got
and
it.
you're looking on the other side, or you can be away from the balloon, just looking at it, but in a two-dimensional slice, right?
Yeah,
And on the left-hand side, you see this other, what looks like a kind of an arc
yeah.
occupying, let's say it's equidistant, so you're at 3 and -3. And as the balloon expands from your vantage point, you just see both lines heading towards their spectral limits. So you'd see the edge of the arc expanding out beyond 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if you have a coordinate system that's in integers. And then at the same time, you'd see the other arc line just simply expanding 5, 6, -5, -7, -7. So you would be able to accurately assess if you moralistically define the lines as being negative and positive, good and bad. You would
Mm.
basically be able to be confirmed as saying if I am assessing that the arc is at a place that is good and bigger numbers are better, and I'm assessing that the arc is at a place that's bad and more negative numbers are worse, then things are getting better and things are getting worse as the balloon expands. And all that's happening is the balloon is expanding and you're
Got it.
simply measuring. And so, from that perspective, I say what I said again, where it's amazing how things are not nearly as important as they used to be, and now they are more important than ever.
Yeah. Well, one of the ways that I can relate to that in my own life is that I experience that the profundity of the impact that I can have
Mm,
is greater and greater. I've got a daughter, for example, right?
sure.
Never used to have that. Uh, and so the profundity of the impact that I can have is greater and greater, and the lightness of being and humor that I bring to even the most profound of my responsibilities is also greater and greater.
Mm. And you compound that by the fact that as you begin to know yourself more, the shameful, completely awe inspiring abyss of our ignorance comes into full display.
Not to mention that while my capacity for lightness of heart and humor, my capacity gets greater and I occupy it more often. I
Mm.
also have profound failures to occupy that
Isn't
space.
that the truth? Holy crap. So, one of the things, and it's funny, you and I both fathers of daughters. And so I think I shared with you in a previous show that for many years, I nursed the perspective that I was just the wrong parent. And I think we've had that discussion before. And it's been interesting because my daughter has now told me that I need to get permission to talk about her. So this is probably the last time that I can do that and get away with it. She causes me to reflect deeply on the projections and the insecurities that I have, how people should be, because it's interesting. If you think you have an understanding of your emotions and you think you have peace and clarity and kindness and compassion in your heart, look at a child that is behaving in a way that you consider to be barbaric. And if that child happens to be your own, learn from yourself as to the demons that come up from your own insecurities in childhood. And I know for me, that is an interesting adventure.
Well, you've got me all curious now.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you promised not to talk about your daughter, so we won't.
I did. And so what is, I'll tell you the lessons for me. I won't talk about her, so I will be technically in integrity. The growth for me is recognizing that my projections on her as to the person she is supposed to be are my projections. And her behavior, if I say that I honor and treasure the capacity and the practice of personal freedom, if I say I believe these things, then I must be committed to that belief, which means I get to surrender to whomever she wishes to be. And I get to explore ways in which I get to be a guiding force, but one in which I am clear about not making the things that are happening wrong. That is not to say that activities and events and results are not to be corrected if a certain outcome is what we want, behavior, TV, going to bed, whatever. But in this moment, as I am behaving and responding to the situation, how can I make it not wrong?
Yes.
And that is a new application of yes and.
Well, it's such a valuable, that's one of the real growing edges of yes and for me is, I spend a lot of my days training teams to employ yes and my fervent assertion is that there is no circumstance in which yes and not only isn't possible, but there is no circumstance in which it isn't valuable. And as a way of being, as a practice of comporting ourselves with other people. And what you just said, the practice of wanting to affect another person's behavior, which is something that we as parents, I think, are responsible to do. Something that we as leaders are responsible to do, while simultaneously not making the unwanted behavior wrong, is a profound challenge.
Well, just making the mental distinction between the idea, well, I don't know. I've been failing often, and what's wonderful about failure is it gives lots of opportunity and pause to just look and breathe. So here's a cool one. I don't know how cool it is, but we're geeking out, so let's have some fun. I am appreciating that solutions only need to exist where problems are framed. I'll let you catch up.
Because I'm always behind. No, I'm kidding. I'm playing with you. So solutions are needed, you said.
Solutions only seem to exist.
Solutions only exist where
Seem to
problems
exist.
see. Okay.
Only seem to exist where
Solutions
problems are frames.
only seem to exist where problems are framed.
Frame. Yes.
I've understood all of those words up until framed. Help me
Yes.
understand what you mean by framed.
So, question for you. I think we talked about this a little bit last time. And so let's look at this. If you are trying to get across the room, let's say you've gone to a magical adventure center, because I like to play games, and let's
Okay.
have some fun. So let's say you're going to a magical adventure center, and in this adventure center there is a room, and in the room there are two sides, and your job is to get from one side of the room to the other side of the room. That is your objective, to get
Okay.
from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Most neurotypical folks will then look at the room, and let's say the room is filled with objects of different sizes, some of which have surfaces that can support your getting to the other side of the room, and some will likely resist or provide
So, for
challenge.
example, there might be a trench, and across that trench is a sturdy 6x8 piece of lumber that I can easily walk across.
Right.
And across the next trench, there may be stretched a piece of butcher paper, which will not support my weight.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. You're tracking with me. So what will tend to happen for most neurotypical people is they will now reorient the objects that are neutral objects in the room into things that will either help me get across the room or things that will be in the way, that will stop me from getting across the room.
Okay.
And so things either will help or they will be problems.
Okay.
And I'm just saying, I appreciate the objective of getting across the room. But what happens if we're just going to suspend the activity or the objective of getting across the room? How can we see what we have done to transform the meaning of these objects in the room? What if the objective were to now defend your side of the room? Now the things that help transition across the room become dangerous objects for people who are potentially coming to invade your space or whatever the objective might be.
And so when you say framing a problem, is that the same as defining the problem?
Yes, that is what I mean.
So in the first definition, the problem is get from here to there. The second definition is
the objective is get from here to there. The problem is anything that stops me from getting from here.
That butcher
Trenches
paper
and
that
things like
doesn't cover,
butcher paper
yeah.
that doesn't. Correct.
And so I can imagine a completely different, a third and really different problem is, here's your room, enjoy yourself.
Objective.
Objective.
So it's interesting that you would say that that's a problem.
Because in the mathematical sense.
Well, again, let's talk about mathematics. Fortunately, I seem to have a small interest.
Yeah,
so,
no, you do. Yeah.
So what I will tell you is let us understand what mathematics really is, and then we'll back into what you just said. Okay?
Yes.
Because part of my job, part of the thing I do best in the world is I help people clarify their thinking and explore and discover confidence in themselves. So only two things I do. Whether I'm having conversations with my parents, if I'm at, doing community service, if I'm at work, if I'm probably doing one of those two things. I want you to feel amazing about what you bring to the world, and I want to make sure that you have distinctions in your own thinking to make you recognize where there are probably assumptions that are not helping you to your best effort. So mathematics, for most people, is a painful subject that articulates abstraction, right?
Okay. Yeah. Great.
And my heart breaks. So my retirement plan. I want to be a math teacher when I get old. I don't have to worry about building businesses on the like. I will either be a college level calculus teacher, basic calculus teacher, or a high school a high school calculus teacher.
How derivative.
Yeah. Ha ha ha. I saw that. That was barely funny, but you did very well. That was good. I appreciate you. So here's why. Because most people get introduced to mathematics as a painful exercise in abstraction.
Yes, agreed.
And what most people don't get to appreciate is that mathematics is a language. It's just a language.
And
It's like,
it's a language that describes things, right? I mean, I first loved geometry when it
sure.
came to mathematics. I first loved geometry because it's stuff.
Yes.
And then I remember taking trig, and while a whole lot of my friends were hating it, I loved it
Mm.
because once again, it was like just pointing right back to the
hmm
things that we learned about in geometry.
Yes.
And then I
And
built stuff using
yes.
trigonometry.
Yes. And so calculus 3 is all about three-dimensional vectors and literally building roller coasters.
Right.
That's the stuff of roller coasters. Like you are literally doing the most fun thing you go pay money to do. You can build in your own mind if you understand the highest levels of calculus. But most folks don't ever get an introduction to math that makes it useful.
Mm-hmm.
For instance,
So
fundamental
all of this,
theorem.
by the way, came out of my talking about you said problem, you shifted me to objective, and I said mathematically speaking.
Right. That's why we're going there.
Yeah.
Because you like to open up the cans of worms, and I love to pour them out. Here we are. So let's talk about then the nature. If we frame the understanding of math as the decoding of a language, because again, the ultimate purpose of mathematics isn't for you to be able to solve x for 4x. The purpose of math is for you to be able to describe the universe as you perceive it in this format that allows for very precise abstract expression.
Mm.
So whether you're doing differential calculus or partial differential equations, I mean, come on, you solve this stuff. This is how intelligent you are. You solve some of the hardest coupled parabolic partial differential equations known to man. You know what you do when you do that? You
I
stand up
catch
and walk.
catch
You
things.
walk,
I
just walk across the room. One of the hardest problems to solve on the planet. And we do it literally without thinking.
And I remember, I remember in high school having a glass, 2/3 full of water
Hmm.
and falling. I tripped. And I remember kind of doing some contortions as I fell,
Okay.
not only taking into account which way is up, but even which way is momentum,
Yes.
and spilling hardly any of it.
Yes.
I remember being just gobsmacked that I had accomplished that. And I thought of it at the time as an incredibly sophisticated math and physics problem.
Yes. You would be absolutely correct.
Without
You
thinking.
probably and so the idea about math is as it gets more and more sophisticated, the tools you have to describe natural motion in the universe, because that's what usually math is about. Energy flow and natural motion. When we do it to a certain extent, math becomes physics. But it's all the same stuff.
So I want to show you something that because we're talking, you and we're always talking about the human mind and what it's
Sure.
capable of, and how just incredibly amazing it is. And speaking of math, I'll take a quick tangent before I take a different tangent. When people ask us to do soft skills training,
Okay.
some of which you've been a part of, I don't like the word soft skills because it's all math, right? It's like this is a hard algorithmic set of skills, this
Sure.
interpersonal skill thing.
Yes.
So AI is we all know, a big topic right now, and we're looking at a reason that math is more than we think it is. That even
Okay.
though you don't yet know that math is more than we think it is, because I asked the AI to do something mathematical.
Okay.
I asked it to generate an image of 4 people having a conversation over coffee.
Okay.
And so here it's given us 5. I also, by the way, asked it to create that image in a way that did not look like an AI image.
Okay.
And so here is an AI image that looks like an AI image with 5 people, or arguably 3, 3 because all of the men are the same guy.
Okay.
Anyway, pardon my my
Okay.
tangent.
Okay.
There
I
you
can
go.
appreciate that. So to bring it back to the point that you were making earlier, if you if you look at and appreciate math as a means for communication, and the more complex and sophisticated it becomes, the better the tools and vocabulary you have to describe the universe. So if you think of arithmetic as grunting and pointing, and matrix algebra as speaking but not conjugating your verbs, and theoretical, you have some partial differential equations. Case in point, another example of just how amazing we are, but we don't think about it this way. You are lying in bed. It is 10:30 at night. You hear footsteps in the hallway outside. What would cause you what would need to happen with those footsteps as you hear them to be the difference between you're grabbing your gun from your nightstand or you're running out to comfort the person that might be in that hallway?
Mhm.
What would be the difference?
Oh, I mean, other accompanying sounds for one.
Other accompanying sounds. What else?
Um, Knowledge of who went to bed in that house with me.
Exactly. What else? How about the
The
heaviness
the
of the
heavy, right,
footsteps?
the
The thud.
the depth of the thud and the information that my brain makes of the depth of the thud and things like the rhythm and pace of the footsteps.
So partial differential equations require initial conditions. Who did I go to bed with? Who was in the house when I went to sleep? Boundary conditions. My house has 4 walls. Who is likely to be in here, and what kind of impact do they make on the floor when they walk? Because I have experienced this before.
Yeah.
And then the actual function of the thing happening as it happened. What are the other sounds that are occurring? Like, these are the things we describe when we try to solve partial differential equations, right? And more importantly, what's important about partial differential equations? They are not the function itself that you are looking to describe. They are echoes, derivatives of the thing that you're looking to describe. So you're listening, you're not seeing, you don't have the full aspect to perceive the action happening, but instead you have partial information. And all partial differential equations is the ability to describe something that is happening for which you do not have all the information. And so you basically take all of that information, and based on what you have, you make certain integrations. Literally what it is, an integral. You integrate the function that you have with the information that you have to make a best guess as to what that thing is with a window of error. That's all a partial differential equation is. It's a system's derivative that you are provided with a couple of details about it. And your job is to guess what the heck is in the other room. And how fast is it moving?
So speaking of rooms, if we go back to the room with its various objectives,
Sure.
and I was
Thank you.
thinking of
Now
objectives.
you understand why I make the distinction between problem and objective. Because to me, a problem is an area of resistance, something that is not resolved that helps me on my way, whereas an objective is the description of the thing I am intending to accomplish.
Sure.
And
Sure.
problems
No, I
can
get you.
help me on the way to objectives.
I like the definition of a problem as an area. I think you call it an area of resistance.
Yes,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
it's just an element of resistance in a function in which you are intending to get to another destination. The exercise itself is not a problem, or it can be, but you frame it differently.
Fair enough. And and the image that is coming to me right now is, the objective of a vehicle, for example, is to get from here to there.
Yes.
And one of the areas of resistance
Is the friction on the road.
is the friction of the road, or wind resistance. And I don't know that anybody is out there thinking we have to solve this problem in the sense that we have to make it disappear.
Right.
We accept resistance.
Yes.
There is going to be air resistance, and we don't even work to minimize it because there are other issues like comfort.
Oh my gosh. I think you may be bridging in on stoicism. Look at that.
So my car could have a lot less air resistance if I was willing, and if other consumers were willing to sacrifice comfort.
Right.
I want to sit upright, and
Right.
so do most of us. And so it's got a considerable amount more air resistance than it might otherwise have.
Sure. Because it could just be a flat bullet and you just lie down in the car.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I think we've, in some ways, finally, I say right in my head, come to what the title of our time together today is: this professional happiness versus professional growing up.
Mm.
The one of the what are they say that the comparison is the thief of joy. I think perfectionism is another thief of joy, and you and I have gotten into perfect before. We don't need to do that again.
Sure.
And I will say that I've found profound peace in the moments when I am willing to accept that the resistance that I face is a symptom of priorities that I have deliberately chosen. For example,
I'm not challenging you. It's just your words are so pathological at times.
Well, I'm embracing the struggle that I sometimes feel and have felt.
You
Right?
use the word symptom. You use the word symptom.
Fine.
I'm always busting your chops. You know I have to.
Yeah, and I use that word deliberately because
I know.
because I'm there's a certain grace that I find that when I give myself the grace for having the experience that I'm having, then I can more easily step out of the struggle.
Okay.
So, for example, owning my own business presents challenges that when I was taking a paycheck just did not exist.
Amen.
Right? Like, how am I going to pay the bills was a question that I could easily answer when I drew a paycheck. And the bills were limited to those in my household.
Okay.
The bills are now not only limited to my household, but also how am I going to pay the bills of the business and meet the earning needs of the folks who are on my team and things like that. These are areas of resistance. And there are areas of resistance that I willingly have taken on because of the priority that I have chosen to make the impact in the world that I want to make.
You say things and my brain goes on fire. I appreciate you, my friend. Because what you're sharing with me and what you're showing me is we all have an opportunity to appreciate perspective.
Mm.
Because one of the reasons I think you're an entrepreneur is innately you know that the perspective that I'm getting a paycheck, and so I am having to pay bills. I think about that and it makes me smile so intently because you're getting that paycheck is the real game afoot, as you know, is your productivity at the business that you serve being able to pay bills with your work. So you are literally being used to pay bills.
That's right.
And if you don't pay those bills, you don't have a job anymore. And what's crazy is that somebody that's probably not as smart as you is responsible for your fate on being able to be that person being productive to pay bills in the job. But we'll have that conversation a different day. The fact that that's not in the realm of the perspective that you are choosing to focus on as you think about how safe that paycheck is coming in. Because remember, part of our ethos is that we're smarter than the people that would otherwise employ us, which is why we're self-employed, or at least so we
Maybe,
pretend. We pretend
maybe.
it's a game. I am not speaking truth here. I am just talking about a perspective that informs our nonsense.
Oh, no. You've got my mind churning on what is the meaning of intelligence, because there are kinds of intelligence
Sure,
that I have in spades,
sure.
and there are kinds of intelligence that others have where I catch myself thinking, man, you are not that smart. And then I see you succeeding at this or that, and I realize
You're not counting
you
the
are
right
probably
chips.
saying the same thing about me, watching me flounder. I have it has the kind of the articulateness, for example, is just a kind of intelligence that I have grown up valuing and thinking of as part of a small set of intelligences. And
Sure.
the more exposure I have to other humans, um, the more I see there are all of these other incredible intelligences. I
Mm-hmm.
can remember, for example, teaching high school, where there was a student in my class who was disruptive and did not have a lot of emotional intelligence
Okay.
and did not have a lot of verbal intelligence and did not demonstrate a lot of mathematical intelligence. And all these kinds of ways in which you might have said he doesn't have much intelligence, and probably, I mean, I never measured it, probably didn't have a high IQ.
Mm-hmm.
And other teachers, I found I couldn't hang around, I couldn't talk with them about him because they would speak so disparagingly of him.
Hmm.
And it just bothered me, even though I found him incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I was teaching theater, and I arrayed all of the lighting instruments that we had, every different type, around the room. And I put students in groups, and I said, you're going to go from instrument to instrument, and I want you to take them apart and put them back together. There are lots of ways you can take these things apart by hand. Figure them out. Take them apart, put them back together, learn what you can. Try not to break them. If you break them, oh well. And I remember looking out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. He had a broom handle, and he was using a broom handle in some way on the lighting instrument. I had no idea what he was doing, and I was curious, so I walked over, and he quickly tried to hide the broom handle behind his back. I said, no, please carry on. I just wanted to see what you're up to. And I learned in that moment the incredible mechanical intelligence that this kid had. And from then on, if there was any kind of mechanical challenge that I needed students to address, I said, all right, you take these two folks and go accomplish this mechanical feat. I don't know how you're going to do it. You'll figure it out. This kid had profound mechanical intelligence beyond mine, by a long stretch.
Mm. Mm. So one of the things I wanted to come back to for our topic that is appropriate
Yeah.
is the room.
Mm.
And in thinking about happiness versus growth, I would tell you getting across the room in the objective
Mm.
is potentially the pursuit of happiness. Recognizing that the room can serve many other purposes than just getting to the objective is where growth happens. And I feel like we're doing two things as we grow our businesses and we go across the room. We're either trying to achieve objectives or responding to the fact that we fail to do so.
Mm.
And if we are kind enough to ourselves, we go and realize that we may be able to get to the other side of the room, but it might not be the most straightforward path. And if we're open enough to recognize the different obstacles that are in the room are actually there and potentially useful in ways that may not serve just that objective, we can create a lot of other experiences on the way that have us very, very in tune with how else this room might serve.
Mm.
And it's not just the dyad of things that exist that either help or harm,
Mm.
but the
Right.
universe becomes far more diverse.
There,
What are your
there's a
thoughts?
there is a tendency, that I think you're pointing at toward sociopathy, right? We all have some tendency towards sociopathy, which I think I've heard described this way, or maybe I haven't. Maybe this is just my mind kind of assimilating all the things I've heard about sociopathy. But the idea that everything in the world and everyone in the world has utility or
Hmm.
has anti-utility
Okay.
is, is if you'll pardon my using the word again, the problem
Okay.
that you're looking at, right? Is if I'm not thinking only of this room as something that I must traverse.
Mm.
If I'm thinking of it only as something that I must traverse, then of course all of the things in it either have utility or they don't.
Mm.
And if traversing the room is only one of the things, one of the objectives that I can define for myself in this room, then suddenly things can just be.
And that's the growth, is recognizing that you have an objective, but that's not all there is.
Mm. Yes.
You have an objective and there's more. And part of your
Mm.
experience, your capacity to influence, your capacity to serve, your capacity to be in service, your capacity to be served, a conduit for which gratitude can flow both ways, is recognizing that we are not just in the room to get across the room.
Mm. And I
I,
think
I
about this.
got I'll tell you one quick story and then I'll stop talking at you. The the test this week has come many times. Actually, heck, this whole month has been a tough month. And we have goals. We have goals. We had goals for 2023 and we didn't make them.
Mm.
We failed miserably on a number of fronts. And my job was to share with folks in the room how and why it happened and what we've learned and what's changed and what's going to be different to go into next time. At the same time, I don't blow smoke and I don't sugarcoat things, but also world is not hell and the sky is not falling. Like we
Yeah.
have to ride the line where there is hope and there is purpose and there is a mission beyond the mission. And there is also reality and there is nuance. And one of the things we were able to process as a team was the realization, and they said it. They said it in their feedback session with me. One of my teammates said, "We're tougher. We're
Mm,
tougher than we were." A year ago, you would say these 5 words, and I would be completely confused. And now, my words to this fella would be, he's one of the best in the world at the thing we're not being asked to do. He has not only absorbed the skill set that has taken years to develop, but I would put him up against anybody on the planet to do this thing that we do. And so
mm,
it was a year. If you can look at what has come before and you can be honest with it, but also spare judgment, spare the dyad of life that can come in and say bad or good or helped or didn't help or hurt. If you can see, oh, okay, well, the things that are valuable are here, and the things that are valuable in some other way. And part of my exercise is to appreciate how they can be made to make the room beautiful, because that
mm.
can also be an objective. How
Yeah.
the room can be made to be comfortable, how the room can be made to be suited for other people to come behind,
Mm,
how the room can be made to serve while we are in it, figuring out how to get to the other side. And so I set you up by saying happiness versus growth, because just like you set me up in our class before, the two are not diametrically opposed.
Indeed. Yeah. I
And
mean, arguably, happiness comes from growth.
does it? It can. It can. And then sometimes
It
it doesn't
doesn't
even
come
live
from
in.
getting what you want. I'll say that.
Oh, wow. You just opened up another can of worms. All right. We got 46 minutes in. Let's go.
Uh, oh yeah, are we going to do that?
We're going to try. We're going to see
Okay.
if we can touch something in the next 14 minutes. So, you just said something really profound. So,
Well,
one of the things I'm learning, and it continues to, every time I think I understand a concept, life goes, "Oh, really? You think you got it? Watch this. See, survive this next challenge and let me know." Um, I am coming to appreciate that the worst thing in the world, this is in jest clearly, the worst thing in the world is not getting what you want. At least that's what it feels like. I'm kidding.
yes.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
The second worst thing in the world is getting what you want, right?
Right.
And what I've come to appreciate as we're building this business, we're 10 years in, we're going through all sorts of really amazing challenges. We're going through the room. Is that I had no idea that my desires were so out of touch with my needs,
Mm,
because getting what I need is something that is already just happening.
mm,
And in many cases, I wouldn't be in a place to accept that which is coming if I weren't, if I were only fixated on getting what I wanted.
mm. You're reminding me of Chris Voss
You have
quote.
mentioned him before.
Yeah, which I mentioned him a lot, and I probably have mentioned this quote before.
You have?
He says, "Don't be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't take something better instead."
Yes. Yes. And I am learning about that at deeper and deeper levels every day. So,
Mm,
the direction to whoever may be listening to this is not to not have goals. That's not the point. Yes, have goals. You need
yeah.
them. You need to have goals because banks lend you money on goals. You have people that will come, people that you probably in the secret
Mm,
parts of your mind, you'll think, "Oh my God, why is this person hanging out with me? Why are they working for us?" But because you have a vision for doing something that that person sees their life unfolding in,
mm,
they could say yes to you And it doesn't. I get it. Compensation is a big deal for folks, and we need to make sure that we pay our people well. Um, but your vision for what you actually want to create, your vision for what it is you're actually trying to bring to the world, if you can cast one and not be a douchebag, not be somebody that's blowing smoke, but like be absolutely committed to this thing becoming a reality, and you communicate that to somebody who's competent, who themselves are looking for meaning and purpose in the world, you guys will go create something great, whether it's
Hmm.
a partner or as an employee or whatever. And I will be honest with you, I am extraordinarily blessed because I have a group of people who work for the company that are on this ride for reasons I can't really tell you, but all I can tell you is they're pretty fired up for this crazy vision that I have, and I believe it can make it happen. However, guess what I'm not going to do? And this is our biggest responsibility as leaders, is to not create hell or justify it because of some vision in the future. I can't tell you how many organizations, corporate organizations, create
Mm.
terrible work environments,
Yes.
terrible goals for salespeople because they have this vision of what must exist. And they do so at the sacrifice of culture, of the sacrifice of who you are, at the sacrifice of their integrity, at the sacrifice of their quality, at the sacrifice of the fabric of what makes the business viable.
Yes. You talk about behavioral flexibility,
Yes, I
right?
do.
Really important. Sometimes people, the companies that we work with, the leaders that I'm working with, they'll talk about giving somebody a long leash. I give them a long leash, or the as if that is the opposite of putting somebody on rails.
Mm.
And so what I talk about is wide boundaries. And I forget who it was. There's somebody who talks about broad boulevards and high curbs,
Okay.
right? Meaning there's lots of behavioral flexibility that you are permitted, and in your analogy, that we as leaders may permit ourselves, and and inviolable boundaries,
Mm.
that if we say these are our values and that is our vision, then these are the boundaries that we will not cross in pursuit of that vision. And anything else is 100% fair game.
I can dig it. And to me, there's another analogy that comes up that I really like a lot where people will say, I offer you a skeleton and not a skin.
Mm. Yes. Yeah.
I offer you a skeleton and not a skin. And so
There's
we
so many
operate,
great metaphors in that realm.
so we don't limit what is possible. We do say there is a quality to which we will behave and adhere.
Yeah.
And that quality has almost nothing to do with the activities, but they do. You will find yourself, if you are living in integrity, the chances that you will steal something reduce dramatically. I won't say it's impossible, because you remember, we always live with the Mogadishu test. The Mogadishu test
Yeah.
is always out
Yep.
there. So for those
Yep.
of people who are listening out there, every time I have a kind of off the rails experience where we are testing our values, we recognize that our values still are a series of ideas that look to hold us convergent to our standard of conduct as we go about the world doing what we need to do. But we also realize that, continuum mechanics was my favorite class. There are jump conditions. There are boundaries at which those values, like any other system in the world, operate well, and then around which they don't.
Yes. There, another way that, I don't think I've thought this way exactly in response to your Mogadishu test.
Oh,
There
for
are
everybody
there
who's
are
listening, Mogadishu test says you're dropped into a part of Mogadishu naked and afraid, and you have to find your way out of the country, and you don't have any money.
And what would you not do in order to
What would you
accomplish
do
that?
or not do to accomplish that?
Yeah.
How would your values change? How would your personality change? Okay,
So
keep
one
going.
of the things that occurs to me right now, for example, is given a particular vision, a particular objective, there is a different set of, or at least a different restriction of core values that apply.
Okay, tell me more.
And I don't know if this is true. I'm just playing with this right now.
Okay,
So, in pursuit of the vision of my company, there are certain things that I would do and other things that are outside what I would might think of as the ethical boundaries for myself.
okay.
Those boundaries would not necessarily be the same if my goal is feed my kid.
Hmm.
Right? There are ways that I would let my vision of my company fall, where feeding my kid I would go beyond what I'm willing to do to prevent the fall of my company. I would not I would not hold myself to those same standards if I thought that my kids having food was also at risk if I was unwilling to go to those places.
I'm going to challenge you on that.
Yeah, I'm challenging myself on it.
I'm going to challenge you on that because there's a presupposition of a limited range of motion.
Mhm.
That there in the darkness of that the construct of that premise, there's a somewhere in there it says that my options are limited, my resources are limited, my access to creativity is limited, so
There
I
you
am
go.
open to depravity.
Right. Yes.
And I've lost fortunes. I've been evicted from corporate spaces. I haven't had foreclosure yet, but pretty damn close at some points in my life. It's been an interesting 20 something years of building businesses that have done well and not done well all the time, right? And what I'll tell you is the capacity to operate from an abundant frame
Mm.
has nothing to do with what's in my bank account.
Well said.
And I learned that the hard way.
Well said.
And so, one of the biggest mistakes I made as a young entrepreneur was that I would, and this was in my 20s, I would confuse my self worth with my net worth. It was awesome when I was a millionaire several times over. It was it led to an almost suicidal state
Hmm.
when I was in debt and my net worth was close to negative $2 million at the time.
Hmm.
And so confusing my self worth with my net worth was a tragic practice that had to be transcended.
And to tie it back to professional happiness versus professional growth or any kind of growth, the I consider all of the ways in which I have so far been able to disentangle my self-worth from bullshit. That
That's a good.
disentangling,
Yes.
uh, that's the growth.
Yes. 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 See, we were able to make the room useful. Look at that. Look at us. That was
All
fun.
right. Well, this seems like a good moment to call it a wrap. To thank you, Hugh. I always have fun with you, and to thank you for joining us for this conversation. See you next time.
Go be amazing.